Hi everybody, welcome to another video. This time on dent removal, or trying to remove dents. Now you see this crease here. Whatever I did, I just could not get that out. I've got various tools that go inside the tank, you know, proper tools, long tools at different angles to go inside the tank, and sometimes you just cannot get them out. So I thought it'd be good to show you a video of what I do with creases, and also on the same dent there's actually a small hole. But just going to this gluing method, which you see here, I found that it works. I find that it works quite well if it's like a curved dent. But if it's something like this, which we're doing here, a crease, it doesn't work at all, because the metal is just too tight to move. It just will not move. I've got some like a riveter, a spot riveter that you can pull dents out with, which work fine on, you know, things that you can fill afterwards. But with a tank, you have to be really careful, because it needs to obviously hold the fuel. So on this, where it was quite curved in, this glue method worked really well, but it didn't work at all well. Well, it didn't work at all really for the dent. So the whole purpose of the video is to show you what I do with these creases and with the small hole that's in there to make it obviously fuel tight. Before we get into that, I just wanted to say thank you to everybody that likes and subscribes to the videos. I often say it, well, I sometimes say it at the end of a video, and I realise people don't watch them all the way through, so I thought I would say it near the start of one. So thanks to everybody that subscribes and likes the videos. I'm not trying to change the world, it's just, you know, nice to see people appreciate what you do, that's all, really. So thanks to everybody. And I've also set up an Instagram account, which I'll put the address, you can see the address on screen there, and also at the start and the end of the video the address is there. So I'll be putting, you know, different bits. They've literally just started it, so I've got no followers, so if you want to be first, then by all means jump in, and it allow you to sort of send me some videos, etc., of what you're doing, which you can't do on YouTube. So anyway, back to the video. So what I'm doing is I'm going to fill this crease with solder. Now it's normal plumber's solder, so I think it's a tin and lead mix. It used to be more lead, didn't it, but they've put more tin in it these days. Just need to get it a little bit hotter, but I'm using just basic tools. So I've just got a blow lamp, normal plumber's blow lamp, and I've got some solder. Now one thing you need to make sure when you're doing this is to make sure that the tank is completely dry, no fuel in it at all, for obvious reasons. So if it's a relatively fresh tank, make sure you leave it with the lid off, the fuel tap out, pump assembly out, leave it outside in the sunshine for a few days, put some compressed air through it, make sure it's dry, because, you know, this thing could go pop if you do it at the wrong time. So once we've made sure we've done that, we need to make sure that the tank is really clean. So make sure the metal is as clean as possible. This one, I did a video on it, has been stripped, so just make sure that the metal that you're going to solder is really clean, because it won't adhere to it if it's not clean. And the other thing to do is to make sure, I mean, I've been rabbiting on, but you see at the start of this, and you'll see where I'm filling the little hole, which is the crease underneath. Make sure that you get the metal nice and hot enough that it melts the solder. That's what I always do. So I use a little, you'll see me using a little bit of solder to dab on it to check the temperature of the metal. So the metal must melt the solder, not the flame. And then once it starts melting the solder, which you should see in a second in this actual hole, once it starts melting the solder, you can then feed it in and keep the heat on. So this is what I'm doing here. I'm just checking that the metal is hot enough to melt the solder, and then once it starts to go, you can keep a bit of heat on every now and again and feed the solder in. So the actual melting heat is coming from the tank, and that's how you can make sure that the solder will adhere to the tank properly. And that's the only way you're going to make sure that it will seal a hole to keep fueling, which is obviously the whole purpose of the filling of the hole. But the other thing we're doing, sorry, this is the second time I'm recording this, so I've got a bit of a dry throat now. The other thing we're doing is making sure that we're not going to get shrink back when we do the filling. Now it's going to require a skim of filler over the top, because you're not going to make the solder, you know, super flat for the primer to go on top. So all you're trying to do is make sure that it doesn't leak through the small hole, and you're also making sure that there's going to be no shrink back when you put the filler on. You know, you can put filler on in 3 or 4 different goes, so giving it a thinner layer and build it up, but you can get shrink back, and sometimes you'll get it a month or 2 months afterwards. If something's been in the sun or something like that, you can get it shrinking back afterwards. So it's always, I find it a good idea, and you'll see there what I'm trying to do is balance it, and I'm not doing too well there. Beanbag is ideal if you've got a beanbag and somebody doesn't mind you using it, or if you've got a purpose beanbag for the garage, because then you can set it at the angle you want. But I'm basically trying to hold the tank between my inner arms while feeding the solder in, and the reason for doing that is because I'm not sure where the best place for the tank to be, because what I'm trying to do is get it to find its own level to fill in the, so you haven't got too much solder one end than the other, because obviously the solder will run with wherever the tank is going. So if you turn the tank to the left, the solder will all run to the left because it's all liquid. So that's what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to build it up so that there's enough on there, and you see me getting some more flux, and that's the flux that's burning. So keep the flux on there, which helps it spread. But as I say, you really need to make sure the metal is clean, and I tend to, when I'm trying the solder to make sure the tank is hot enough to melt the solder, I tend to not use flux, because it can get messy, and it can also stop, as odd as it sounds, it can stop it actually adhering properly if the flux is burnt rather than a liquid, if that makes sense. So I always try with the solder, so that I know when the tank's hot enough, because solder just starts to melt, and then I will get some flux on the end of the solder and start feeding that in. So the flux only goes on when the tank is hot enough to melt the solder. Now you see I'm using a grinder to clean it all up. Don't worry about using a grinder. Go as hard as you can with the grinder, because if your soldering's worth anything, it's going to be the fact that it will withstand the grinder easily, because what you're trying to do is make the solder part of the tank. So it shouldn't come off. You should be able to use a wire brush as hard as you like, and it should leave it, absolutely fine. And then you know that your solder's actually taken to the metal properly. And this will seal, hold fuel, no problem at all. And we can just put a skim of filler over the top. We know we're not going to get shrink back. I've filmed the whole thing of this tank from start to finish, so you will see the priming videos, etc. as we go along, and you'll see what it comes out like. But we'll get no shrink back, and it'll be a good repair. So once again, thanks everybody for watching, liking, subscribing, etc. It is appreciated. Cheers guys, I'll keep the videos coming. Thanks very much. Bye bye.